way. Sure. All right. Hello. We are live. We'll see if this works. So, those of you that just saw that earlier clip, just bear with us. I'm sorry about the delay. Sort of new to this broadcasting in two different ways, two different places at the same time. It's a little confusing for me. So, I apologize. But hopefully, if you're in that private chat on Kainos Joy community and there's that event, hopefully you're seeing this live. If not, I will send that out a different way for others to watch later. But yeah, I'm really excited to dive right in. We have Greg Doles for about 45 minutes of our time here. So I want to jump right in. And he's going to talk a little bit about his blog. His recent post that he posted about is called Failing the Turing Test. We're just having an interesting discussion on how that has to do with our human existence and just life in general, like with our perfect image. We're made in the perfect image and likeness of God, but what does that look like? And what is that? How does that impact our relationship with others, our relationship with God, especially our theology? So yeah, let's just start there. Introduce yourself. Who are you? Where you're from? And yeah, tell us a little bit about your website.
I'm Greg Doles.
Mhm.
I live in Gainesville, Florida, which is the home of the Florida Gators. So that's where I make my home. And my blog was something that my daughter Katie Cat and my daughter-in-law Faith talked me into writing because I was rather reluctant to ever write one. But now I've been writing this blog for about 8 years. But my reluctance was I didn't want to write things that were extemporaneous, like so many blogs can be, where you just sort of, well, here's my thoughts. I'm just going to stream of conscious at you, and that didn't appeal to me because because I'm a songwriter as well. I have a certain sense of that you don't want to waste people's time. Do what you're going to do. And make it worthwhile. If they're going to give you 4 minutes, which by the way, it's 4 or 5 minutes is what it takes to read my blog. If they're going to give you 4 or 5 minutes to listen to your song or read your blog, you should make it worth their while. And so I wanted to be more thoughtful about that rather than just stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into writing the blog way back. And for me, it was trying to pull together a lot of the disparate paths my brain runs in, right? Certainly my Christian faith, but also my artistic inclinations and my observation of culture, my interest in psychiatry, psychology and anthropology, and then of course philosophy. And so, in a lot of ways, I pull all of those threads when I'm writing. I'm thinking in terms of all of those things at the same time. And of course, the blog is called Chasing Light, which I came up with that name because it was the idea of chiaroscuro, and that's probably a word nobody's very familiar with. Painters and photographers are somewhat familiar with it if they're professional. It is the interplay of light and shadow, is chiaroscuro. So, like when an artist is going to paint somebody out on a sunny day, they've got to know where the light source is to know where to place the shadow.
Interesting.
So there's an interplay. And so it's the same thing with photography, where you see sort of where they use, especially in black and white photography, the way they use the point of light, the source of light, and how it hits the subject. And so chasing light is the idea that we're always looking to know more about what it is that our faith calls us to. And that requires us not to just sort of idly wait for it to come to us, but we go get it. We go out and let our minds discover it in all the many ways that it's around us, because the presence of God's light is everywhere. And knowing where that's falling is part of what I'm trying to observe in my blog writing. So that's how my idea of my blog in a nutshell.
Hmm. So, what inspired you to write this particular blog? This last blog that you wrote really intrigued me. I have not heard much about the Turing test until we chatted a little more
Yeah,
earlier, and then I remembered, oh, okay, this is where it's coming from. But just the element of our relationships with each other and AI, and we were joking around about the Super Bowl commercial. How do
sure.
you know you're a robot? And not
Robot.
to get confused with eschatology. None of this is like fear about Antichrist stuff or
No,
any of
no,
that.
no, no.
This is
What
all
yeah, I think there is a trepidation that the culture at large has, and I think Christians wind up bringing their own forms of trepidation, which usually will take the shape of eschatological fears.
sure.
But the concept of AI uh, is starting to become more and more realized. The distinctions of AI are AI, then AGI, and then ASI. Um, and what we've got now is basically AI, which is largely a parlor trick. It's not really. It's not. That's like you teach your kid how to spell the word catastrophe, but they can't really spell the word cat because it's a trick.
Mhm.
you, you've taught them something in particular, and so AI is not self-thought. It is an algorithm that knows how to search and find and bring together things in a certain format. So it's very particularized.
Mhm.
But AGI, I think, is the thing we fear more because that'll be general intelligence, which means it's intelligence that builds upon itself,
Mm.
and so that it won't be put in particularized use. It would be in more general use, and that, of course, could lead to ASI, which is artificial superintelligence.
Mhm.
But all of those things are our culture is uh, trying to get a handle on in the midst of all the technological stuff that's rapidly coming at us. And I find that because of that, as, as a Christian, the idea of going back to sort of the fundamentals that make up our understanding of the very nature of existence, which philosophy calls ontology, and that to me is central because what we're being always invited to, and I think the nature of our fallen nature is to perceive the world as we imagine it instead of as it really is. This is part of our disorientation from God. Like you had in your post today that I responded to about the depravity, that man was depraved.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well,
earlier,
that's not what I said.
no, you were saying that wasn't the case. That wasn't the right word
Yeah,
for it.
we're disillusioned.
That's right. And I don't know. The disillusion gets at what I would think it, but disoriented is more
Orient.
along the lines of what I think it is because we've lost
Unclear.
our orientation to reality. Our
Right.
orientation was God, and then we're like we're at odds with our own existence.
Right. That's
And
what
that's the
Genesis is
state
all.
we find ourselves in apart from God.
Yeah.
And so to bring this back to the AI question, we're we're being tempted to see ourselves in that sort of uh, atheistic materialism that we are just our bodies are just the containers of our
Right.
thoughts, and our thoughts are just brain chemistry and whatever, and we're nothing more than that. And the problem with this is it we get pulled further and further into an illusion, right? We're getting further and further away. We begin to imagine the world we're living in as being what we're being told it is, instead of back to the fundamentals of what it is, and
Mhm.
the idea that we're made in the image of God
Hmm.
and made to have a relationship with God. And so the big fear is that we're going to create a computer that can be like us,
Mhm.
And of course, this is a fear. Alan Turing, uh, in 1950, he was one of the earliest innovators of computers, he had a certain fear that computers would somehow get to a place largely to what we're getting at to now,
Mm.
that it would be hard to distinguish what was human from what was not human. And so he started developing what was called the Turing Test, which was this line of questioning that got into a sense of self-awareness, meaning that what makes us unique is that we are self-aware creatures,
Mm-hmm.
and even more so than other animals. Like humans are capable. As humans, we're aware that one day we die. There's no other animal that's aware that one day they're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's a psychological thing we live with, right? But that's a level of self-awareness
Mm-hmm.
that he would be part of his test, so to speak. And so the idea of it was, if we could figure that out, we could head that off before things got out of control. And of course, now things are like whatever they are now. Largely, like I said, it's a parlor trick, but I don't know that um, he would have even imagined what that have been. But I got into the thought. There's two. I'm running several veins in that blog at the same time. I'm getting at the idea that there's a certain ontological um, implosion that a materialist mind would say that creatures that came into existence by an accident, meaning out of chaos, there was no design, would then tell you that we could design something that could be self-aware. I mean, there's a certain ironic
Hmm.
twist to that. There's a that's a logic loop that's kind of broken, and then there's the element of sort of the postmodern mind has already sort of jettisoned rationality in many ways, and so they would be the ones to fail the Turing test because they would seem disassociative
Hmm.
in a way that a computer might be. And so all of this is entertaining to me, right? As a person who loves philosophy and theology and these other things. So and sort of the anthropology of that, because you've got all these dynamics within culture that are responding. And as Christians, what we're trying to not do is get on the treadmill of panic or in whatever it is that everybody else is in. And we need to be centered in the reality that we are made in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
And that ontology, and this is very important, that ontology has a built-in teleology. Now, what teleology is another one of those philosophy words for purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We were made for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that purpose, God is that purpose. He is the full of our attention. And so everything else then is the illusion of things wanting to make themselves the higher purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
The higher thing that we're supposed to be either entertained by or make our pursuit or be obsessed with.
The distraction.
All of those things. Yes, exactly. And this is why the fall is understood in terms of sin, largely because sin is, and I love this about the Eastern Orthodox Church. They understand that all things exist in God,
Mm-hmm.
and he is as
Colossians, right?
well, you got the passage in Colossians, you got the beginning of the book of John, you've
Yeah.
got Paul talking about it in Acts 17. The God that everything has its being in,
Mm-hmm.
moving and it has its being in. But you also have the idea that because we're created in God's image, we were meant to understand ourselves associated to that image, not disassociated from it. And so the Eastern Orthodox Church sees the being in God as existence itself.
Wait, what? The
That
being.
being in God, that, well, I was about to say, it was Thomas Aquinas, who's who I was about to quote, who describes God as ipsum est substantia, which is the Latin for God is the essence of being itself. And what he is saying there is he is the only reality. There is no other reality apart from God. Like he doesn't exist and then we exist like over here. Like, no,
Yeah.
all of being finds itself in God.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Aquinas back in, I don't know, what's the 12th or 13th century, was saying this. And so for the Eastern Orthodox, they don't see sin in terms of legal as much as they see it ontologically. You're either moving in the direction of your own existence or you're moving away from it.
Yes, that makes sense.
So you're either moving towards God, which is embracing the full sense of what it means to exist, which was back to the garden, which was heaven on earth. That was, it was that harmony of heaven and earth. And sin, therefore, is sort of moving and disassembling or deconstructing ourselves.
Okay.
And so St. Augustine, in his Confessions, talks about, he makes something that I thought was fascinating. At one point, he describes man after the fall is haunted by the non-existence from which God spoke him out of. Now that one you have to think of.
Yeah, that's
what he's saying there is that the temptation to go back in the direction of non-existence is sort of a haunting aspect to our disoriented state, because we're disoriented from what our existence is. And literally everything we're trying to do in our sinfulness is to self-exist, to put ourselves at the middle or the center of our own existence and bring things around us that make that existence what we want it to be. And so we get obsessed with that, and we assume that that's our teleos, that's our purpose, that's what we're made for. And then we convince ourselves of that.
Like, that's when we hold on to these identities.
Right.
Even if it's good or bad, I'm a teacher, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a drug addict, or I am a mental illness patient, whatever.
Right.
Anything
Right.
hold that's above your true identity and the nature and likeness of God. But then, what do you mean by like, it brings us to the point of, like you said, self-awareness. How are we sure, like, I just want to play devil's advocate here, that we, like what you were saying with the atheists and whatnot, that we are truly, co-seated in heavenly places with Christ. We are truly in union with him. Or not even the atheists, but even like the fundamental Christian people who in some fringe groups, they believe that you're separate from God. And
Right.
how do we convince people that are still stuck in that mindset? Think of it as like the prodigal son's brother, the prodigal's brother had a little bit of that issue where he thought he had to do things in his own striving in order to get to the kingdom. Meanwhile, he's sulking outside of the kingdom. So how do we reach people like that, like that feel like they're so, or even people that feel like they got it all together and they know it all?
Well, I think that actually was what the prodigal's brother was.
The what?
The prodigal brother thought he had it. He was taking the right path.
Yeah,
But in many ways, I think the text there also kind of gives you a suspicion that he was also a prodigal in a different way, meaning that he was close to the Father
yeah,
and yet had his own agenda,
right.
because he wanted his party, and he
Yeah.
wanted his thing. So that, like, so this idea that we create that we want to self-exist is something that we're always tempted with.
Mm.
Like, instead of existing in God and understanding that our purpose and our meaning is found in God, it's not
In
found
his
in
rest.
not found in all the things we cook up in our brain,
Yeah,
which is sort of this existential illusion we stay in.
sure.
And so, to me, that's the that's the centerpiece of the faith that we're confessing. And I think that when I think about the journey that like a lot of folks in your group have been on, they got disenchanted with playing the game,
Mhm.
the Christianized game, and so they wanted to find a way. There was sort of this fork in the road. It's either it's going to be real, but it's going to have to really be real. I can't play it that way, or I'm ditching it altogether.
Yeah.
Like it comes down to that. And but we've overcomplicated what makes it real. I mean, Jesus says, when asked the question, "What is the greatest law?" They're trying to catch him. They're trying to catch him in choosing one of the commandments.
Mhm.
And he says to love God with all that you are, basically,
Mhm.
and love your brother as yourself. And
Mhm.
on this, the whole of the law and the prophets hangs.
Mhm.
And it doesn't. He's not setting aside what the law and the prophets were saying. He was saying the whole reason that those things are significant is because they orient. There's the word. That's why I go back to the word orient. We were disoriented in the fall, and that
Mm.
so it reorients us to what our existence is, what it's supposed to be, what's the truth of who we're supposed to be.
Hmm.
And so what we want to do is we want to ditch all of the baggage that people dress that stuff up, and everybody
Mm.
is playing that game. Like, very often, and especially among Protestants, because we're great at this, we're always starting another sect, so, another group. We tend to get disenchanted with that model or that form or that iteration of the Christian faith, and we're going to get free of that, but we wind up in the ditch on the other side of the road, because we wind up we're following the illusion that the problem was those things that they were doing,
Yeah.
or the way they were saying it, and that really wasn't fundamentally it. Uh, I'm convinced you could be in most churches anywhere and still work and still be tuned into God, if you're tuning into God and tuning into your own existence in God, apart from all of the sort of peripheral goings on, because
Yeah.
you're not
Just
going to escape that. You're not going to escape that.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's me being an old guy.
No, no, you got
But
it.
you're not going to escape it. So you might as well just say, you know what? Here's the deal. These people are doing their best, and
Yes.
they're trying to figure this God thing out like I am, and they struggle, and they tell themselves lies, like I tell myself lies.
Uh,
But God have mercy on me.
yeah, otherwise you end up in isolation just like, anyone else in a fringe or in a group where you're just like, okay, let's small knit group of people. You just like become another religion and we don't want that.
Well, it did. Well, it becomes another iteration of trying to figure out what those initial traditions were, right?
Right.
And that's what religion usually is. It's trying to figure out how to embrace some of the traditions of the faith. And I have this is my anthropological model on this. I see the ontological truths of existence sort of in the center of a great circle. And those ontological truths all direct us towards God, and they tell us exactly who we are. Those are the ontological truths that place value on us because they locate us right in God. Okay. And then on the periphery of that center are traditions which are sort of the habituated practices and disciplines that take shape around wanting to live out that reality. Now, they're not the truths themselves. The truths themselves are transcendent and immutable. The traditions are just something that's trying to find a way to habituate that, embrace that reality. And largely those can be very good. But then around that comes sort of this religious interpretation, not of the truths, but of the habituated practices and disciplines. So they're one thing removed, right? So they're interpreting the traditions rather than interpreting the original truth. And so this is where we get in that, when we're in that religious ring, we think, well, I just need to move to somewhere else on this ring to find my religious understanding of this traditional path, or we want to go further out because we're figuring, well, all of that and the traditions and all of it's bad. Well, the truth is there's a lot of it that's still very good. It's that religious ring that has, in its interpretations, have distorted what the meaning of those traditions was, in much of the same way that the Pharisees had distorted so much of the laws of Moses and the laws of that was handed down within the Talmud, to whereas Jesus would say to them, like, you're in there measuring your tenth of your spices. You've gotten so obsessed with this kind of thing, you completely missed what the point of that was. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, that's that explains how our tendency to sort of become disenchanted, because we get disenchanted with that truth, but that core reality remains the same. And largely, the elements of those traditions certainly have to be practiced in different ways, but the essence of those traditions, usually the way we habituate around those truths, because we will habituate around those truths, in the way we come together, the way we pray, the way we embrace scripture. Like those are disciplined, habituated things that recenter us back to those ontological truths about who we are. But that religious ring is the part that we have to sometimes work our way through. Otherwise, we're moving out to the edges, and we move further out, and then we become far more existential about. Like the further out you get here, you're just out there making up your own stuff, and it's because you remove that much further away from. You've moved that much further away from the core truths. That's why I put it in a circle. It's once you've moved further out, no longer are you even thinking about what those core ontological truths are. I mentioned being made in the image of God, and people check that on in their mind. They check that off as a theological truth. That's a theological point. No, that's an ontological truth. Like gravity is an ontological truth. Like that is just as profound as gravity, because it has exactly the same tangible reality to your existence that gravity does.
Wow.
Yeah, but see that we want to keep this in the abstract, theology, but and this is how modernity has kind of lied to us. They turned us into thinking things, and so now we assume that everything about us has to be. We can sort of think our way to whatever, and that's not.
That's the tree of good and evil.
Well, that is the tree of good and evil, like another iteration, right? Like what we started off this conversation talking about what AI was shaping up to be, another iteration of thinking that we can. I was listening to Jonathan Peugeot today talk about what God are we? What are we heading towards? Like, what is our? Do we even know what we're heading towards? We're just heading out there with AI. We're just heading out. And he's like we don't even know. we don't know where that is, what the point of it is, what's the teleos? Where is it? Where is it taking us, and on what value have we predicated the direction that would take us, or is it just dragging us along? And
Mm.
so these are the questions we need to ask, because there isn't there is a sense of, is it dragging us back to a clearer understanding of our own existence, or is it dragging us into our own illusions and own delusions? And that, to me, this is central idea to what I think is missing in expressed in the Christian faith, is the idea of how profoundly ontological our faith is.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, there's so much to digest in that. I'm just thinking about what you said about AI and technology, and just thinking about like over the years how technology has changed and morphed into different things. My daughter even had a discussion in her fourth grade class, third grade class, about the first computer, and they actually said to her that the first computer is actually a person. And at first I'm like, wait, what did your teacher say? What? But the point being was that the first computer was the brains of the operation, like whoever was coming up with the ideas or thinking about what direction do we go. Think about GPS. Before we had GPS, we had maps. We
Sure.
had a person who would be driving the car. We had the navigator. So similar to that, there are computers. And now we're at this point where there's these avatars, and then there's us, and
Right.
then there's well, now I can just edit my work through this AI technology, and like how much of it is me and how much is technology, it can get really fuzzy. And I think
Well,
people,
what you bring up something very
there's
important.
predation, is what I was going to say, because the creator of it, didn't the creator just, there was like a big discussion in the science boards about like how it almost got shut down completely because of ethical code
You're
violations.
talking about AI now?
Yeah, like the guy, Sam, what's his name? Altman, is it
Right.
Altman? Yeah, the guy, the AI guy. My husband knows about it. I don't really know.
Well,
But
there's actually a few of them, but yes.
yeah, but there was like a huge controversy. He wanted one thing, and the public doesn't really know like the ins and outs, but the whole board had actually shut him down and told him, you can't, I don't know, they like fired him per se. But then he came back, and there was like, I don't know, there was some bickering and lawyers and such, but like he wanted to go down one path and they wanted to go the other path. And there's all this debate about ethics and whatnot. And I find it made me a little not nervous, because, it's outside of my realm of, but a little bit like in the future, what is this going to be for our kids? Yeah. I don't know.
No, that's it, and that's a fair question. We're already seeing what it is before the AI aspect kicks in,
Yeah.
because I've written on this before, that our culture has become more disembodied. We have a disembodied sense of self.
Yeah.
Uh,
And no work ethic. These kids don't.
well, that's its own separate. That's its own separate thing. Uh, but and that has its. We could go. That's a rabbit hole we could certainly chase. The anthropology behind that.
Yeah.
But to me, the the disembodied sense of self is the thing we were unprepared for.
Hmm.
And we have the coming generation, the Generation Z, is is coming into the world far more disembodied sense of self, and this is
Hmm.
the sense of self, because they're beginning to see themselves as much as who they are online as they are in person.
Ah.
Whereas somebody my age, I look at this as like, this is nowhere near who I am.
Yeah.
But but what's my reference point? Well, I have a deeper frame of reference, right? That just sheerly because of my age, but also because of the things that were formative to my understanding of self.
Hmm.
And that's part of what's going on here, is that the formative things about how we understand ourselves, and especially in the millennials and Generation Z, is that their understanding of themselves is sort of disembodied. It has a great chunk of it that's disembodied, and they perceive themselves that way. And so, and there is a certain bloodlessness to it, in the sense that, in the way that being out of your body is without any blood in it.
Hmm.
But I mean it in the sense of, why can they be so cruel to one another
Hmm.
online? Well, they can do that because it's sort of disembodied avatars,
Yeah.
and
You're
it,
dissociating, like you're
it's
not.
a disassociated. That's another
Yeah.
great word for it. It's but that you that sense of that disembodied self does lead to sort of a disassociation
Hmm.
that allows you to act in ways that I imagine AI would act, because it doesn't have uh, it isn't really human. All it
Hmm.
all it can do is weigh some sense of pragmatism against what humans perceive as sentimentality,
Hmm.
and sort of work out the algorithm between the two and just kind of throw them at us. But what we do is far more subtle and sophisticated than that, in the way the human psyche is, because we bear the image of God, and because our sense of consciousness is tied to God, and self-awareness is tied to God. But the more the generations move in the direction of the technologies that disembody them, the more we're getting a glimpse at what the world looks like, uh, with sort of more and more AI uh, orientation. And so that it's a glimpse. And I never look at these things in a fatality.
Hmm.
Because
Doomsday
I just
enders.
no, no, by no means. Look, uh, the persecuted Christians in the first century, uh, they could have certainly,
That was end day. That was.
they could perceive themselves as at the very end of the game, because it was so
Yeah.
horrific,
And they were martyred. Yeah.
right? And so, but history has always done this, right? This is
Yeah.
the story of man, and so and that's why I use the term latest iteration. This is the latest iteration of the same old sins.
Hmm.
It's so. And what do we do with that? What ties us back to our Christian faith throughout the generations, throughout the history of God's people, is that we turn to God and say, "Have mercy on us, God," and we understand that apart from Him, we're going to get swept up,
Yeah.
and so it recenters us. I think that's the if there's the silver lining, the silver lining is that we are always brought back to those core things that are true, the truest about who we are. We are the beloved of God.
Mhm.
And to understand yourself as the beloved of God is not a statement that you say because you're feeling like, well, I'm kind of sentimental. I want to believe I'm loved by God. But no, it is an ontological anchor. It is more true than the table that this laptop is sitting
Mhm.
on. Because it goes to a deeper understanding of what truth is than
Mhm.
this table is capable
Yeah.
of portraying.
Well, see, I keep thinking about when we're talking about end days, the Revelation, Book of Revelation, and Jesus Christ and the revealing, just on the allegorical level that we are all realizing, and we're all on different timelines here, but coming to the knowledge of the truth which is within us, that Christ is all in all, and that we are in a mystical union with Him, whether we know it or not, whether we feel it or not, whether we said the magic prayer or not, because that's all paganism, anyways. It's not really Christianity, but the point of it being like, once I'm sort of like in that union with Christ, there's so much that I feel more than I did before. Like when I didn't know I was in union with Christ, I felt so much, like, I don't know, like passionate. I don't want to say anger, but like um just like a fervent love of the Lord, like the fear of the Lord, like when people when Jesus said to the Pharisees, let's say this, when he said, "Oh, if only they would just come into my rest," um, just a just a passion for people that are lost in the way of. I'm not as concerned with like the prodigals as I am about, like I said, the prodigal brother, the
Right.
one who is so lost in religion. Because I mean, we could speak to the beggar on the street, the addict. That's different. That's different. What I'm concerned about is religion. I'm so concerned, and I just feel like with the wars going on in the Middle East, just everything, and without even getting into like the depths of Israel and all that, whatever
Sure.
you believe, but that that's the Lord's cry. That's his heart, is to, just stop. Because think about it, when the Jews saw Jesus, all the Jews, whoever, whether you're a Pharisee or just an average fisherman Jew, they saw him as either this is the Messiah, or they saw him as getting in the way of the true Messiah coming. Because the Pharisees thought the Messiah was going to come in like all, get rid of the Romans and vengeance. But when Jesus read that passage in Isaiah, he didn't read the following next sentence about the vengeance of the Lord, because he knew they would misunderstand that. The thing about the vengeance of the Lord is not about his wrath coming down upon people and separating out the sheep and the goats and all this. His wrath is restorative, it's his love. But the thing that shakes me the most is like it's been years and years, and this keeps happening now. The majority of Christians in the Western evangelical faith believe the same thing that the Pharisees believed back then. Oh, Jesus is coming, and he's going to come and he's going to wipe out that evil California, or
Right.
whatever. Oh, people these
Yeah,
type,
and the
and
book of
it's
the
just
book of Revelations wasn't about any of that. I mean,
it's not
the book,
about any of that, but like it boggles
literally, the book of Revelations is
my mind.
about recentering us
Recenter.
on on who we are in
Right,
Christ.
right.
These are the
I need
deeper truths. And of
that.
course, he's using apocalyptic language,
Sure.
which was the form of the Jewish writing style
Yes.
of this kind of prophetic language. But
Hmm.
the prophecy here isn't foretelling as much as it's forthtelling.
Forth telling. Okay. Yeah.
And so it is a saying that the truth of who you are in all of this tribulation you're living in right now, there's a deeper truth going on, a deeper
Hmm.
truth that is the reality.
Hmm.
All this other stuff, it's not that their tribulations was not really happening to them, but the significance was not, like they were becoming, the world was infringing on them, and they were thinking, well, this is what the world is, this is what it is all about. And that's not it. That's the illusion. The illusion is that we're trapped in all of this, but we're
Mm.
not trapped in all of it.
Hmm.
But we can be the peacemaker,
Yeah.
and we can be the person who can humbly, um, uh, live out the truths of God, even if it brings us to a martyr's death, not because we like death, but because we know that in doing so, we are being like the exemplar that Christ is to us,
Hmm.
who understood the power of redemptive sacrifice.
Hmm.
And we give ourselves to others, and in giving ourselves to others, God's grace inhabits that
Hmm.
and draws them ever near. And so, but that's a deeper truth.
I
Like,
love that you say giving ourselves to others, not God isn't using us. Well, William Paul Young said that the other day, and I met him on Zoom for the first time. It was really cool. We got to see him, like, it was neat. So he shared a little bit of that, like, and it was like almost bringing me to tears, like thinking about like the way we use our language as Christians. Sometimes, like, even just saying like, "Oh, God used me today." um like, I get what you're saying, and I've said it too, like, God's used me, but I love but I don't think we should use that word used anymore. He's got a point, because it can imply like that kind of angry God kind of thing, like where he just like uses us. He's not in union with us. He uses us for his purpose. It's like you wouldn't say, "Oh, my husband uses me," to it
right,
just
but I think of it in
uh,
terms of like becoming an icon of who God is.
yeah.
Uh, I
Okay.
think of the passage where Jacob is. It's after he has his name changed to Israel, and he's meeting his
Okay.
brother. He's meeting his brother Esau out on the plains, and he's convinced his brother is going to kill him.
Ah, yes.
Matter of fact, he's in the chapter beforehand. He sends his family away to safety, and he's going to meet his brother, but he's cheated his brother, and he just assumes he's going to be killed. And so, and then that night he sleeps and he has the dream and he wrestles with the angel, and he gets the blessing of God. But the next day he goes out and meets his brother Esau. And when he sees his brother Esau, who is glad to see him, he throws his arms around him, he loves him. And
Mhm.
this is the thing that Jacob says: "You have become the face of God to me."
Mm. Yeah.
That in his grace, in Esau's grace. Now here's Esau is not the chosen, so to speak, that Jacob is. Jacob is Israel. But he sees God there. He sees God on Esau's face.
Mm.
And in that sense, I'm thinking that's that icon.
Hmm.
So when we give ourselves, we give ourselves over to the graces and mercies that God has shown us, then
Mhm.
we become an icon of who God is to others.
Wow.
We display that.
That's
And to
beautiful.
me, that's the power
Wow. What a
of
beautiful representation of Esau, For so many years I thought Esau, I thought of that as a
you
bad,
need to go. I want to say it's
yeah.
in the 32nd chapter of Genesis. You
Yeah.
need to go back and read that section, because he literally says you you've been the because he's just amazed by, you know,
Because you
'cause
are like, as you just here.
Esau is basically turning down some other land from him, and Jacob says, "No, I want you to have that land now."
Yeah.
Like Jacob is wanting to give it to him because you become the face of God to
Wow. Bam. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, because
me.
for so many years I'm just thinking, that one passage, God hated Esau, God loved Jacob, and
Right,
you
right, right.
since then, I further studied the word. It's not actually hate, but
No, no.
um yeah, maybe you could talk about that a little more. I don't know if most people know that part, but
Are
that
you
was
talking about the passage in Romans?
yeah, that confused me as an early Christian. That's where I
Well, I
got
mean,
like
Jesus also says he who doesn't hate his brother, father and mother, and his to follow,
right. So the language,
is
yeah,
he is God? Yeah, is he saying hate?
he's
But
not
see,
saying hate.
this is the problem with languages of antiquity
Yeah.
and the way they get interpreted, and then the problem is that the language variations between different languages, and even now current languages like
Yeah, sure.
Italian or Spanish or French or whatever. Language is also created with idiom, which is cultural idiom.
Yes.
So the way that language uses those words is tied
Mhm.
to that idiomatic usage,
And
and
there were a
that's
lot of
part of
idioms back
and
then.
that's part of what's going on here. Is there
Mhm.
you have that idiomatic aspect of
Yeah.
language, so that it's trying to draw a large contrast. It's not trying to say we want a hard and fast definition on words love and hate, and what it's trying to do is no, this is language designed to make you think in terms of can you see the contrast now,
Mhm.
because there is a contrast. There's a great
Mhm.
contrast between the two. So that
Mhm.
that to me also is a best way to understand that passage in Romans as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
And so the idea that God hates and God never loved Esau is just that's foreign.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's foreign to the rest of Scripture. So you really have to. It really sort of defies the hermeneutic or the exegeting process to sort of pull that out and say, well, see, now God hates.
Right.
He doesn't love everybody, uh, but His very essence is love.
Right.
Uh, and what draws us into the center of the narrative of Christ is that it portrays love in the most pure form. that we see in it um, the embodied truth of what it means to love, not just in the aesthetic, but in the fully formed way that love takes shape in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, and I was just looking it up. I was trying to think of that scripture verse where he says, "I never knew you," and I just looked it up. That's how really easy it is with technology. Matthew 7:23. I'm terrible with my verse addresses, but
That's
it
all right.
came into my head because you're thinking about religion, and when you first enter the faith, or at least for me, I start picking up my Bible. I'm like, all right, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to study my Bible and learn. And then you see a passage like that, or you see a, yeah, so like the passage is basically, the religious folks are knocking at the door, they're ready to go to heaven, and then that Jesus said, well, I never knew you. And he said, well, what do you mean? We cast out demons in your name, we prayed, we fasted, whatever, all the things. And then he said, no, get away from me, I never knew you. Go into the outer darkness, right? So when you first read that, it's like, wow, that's pretty harsh, Jesus. Like, you never knew them. I thought you knew everyone. I thought you're in union with
Sure.
everyone. But I remember when I was studying the Greek, now I'm not going to be able to say the names. I don't remember what
That's
it was.
right.
But the word new is actually like intimacy. It
Mhm.
actually means like, because Adam knew Eve and they had a baby.
Mhm.
So when they said new,
I
it's
think it's. I
actually,
think the word of a knowing intimacy is nous.
yeah, oh, yeah. So whatever it is, but that's what I'm saying. It was about intimacy. So the religious people at that time did not have the intimacy of the Lord. You might have been casting out devils, but it wasn't in my name. I knew nothing about it. And so the participation piece is so important. And then when he cast them out into outer darkness, was that a mean thing to do? Was that like a mean trick? Does that mean they're going to be burning it forever in eternal fire? No. No, the outer darkness is a place where they can try to keep going in their own striving, their own strength, and see if they like that. If you want to stay there, you can stay there. Let's see what happens when you go into outer darkness. What happens when you go into outer darkness? Outer darkness is here on earth as well. Like, there's been times in my life where I feel in outer darkness. I didn't feel the presence of the Lord. If I'm immersed in sin, imagine immersed in sin, immersed in my own self-righteousness, or whatever it might be. For me, I had drugs and alcohol as a kid, when I was younger, and it was terrible. It was outer darkness. But now, did he put me there just to punish me, or so I could be used as a vessel? No, he everything is done for a purpose and for a restorative purpose. So it's like, just as they say, part of the process. But why do we cringe when we hear passages like this? I think it's because of misinterpretation, having the wrong lens,
Well,
not
there's a,
understanding
is it what part
Christological.
of it's interpretation, and of course, it's not seeing the scriptures as a whole, for starters, and
Right,
which always leads to that. And
right.
but that the idea of that darkness is that, I mean, I go back to the Eastern Orthodox. You're either moving towards existence or away, and when you're moving towards existence, you're moving towards light. You're moving towards who got to what to that purpose, to the teleos, and the moving the other way is going to be like darkness. It's going to be like,
Yeah.
because everything about it is a destructive path.
Mhm.
Um, and
But that
so,
can be comforting to people. Like, if you've grown up in that, and then all of a sudden, that's why it's like, I believe the process is so important, because can you imagine you're growing up like this and you just have this terrible life, and then boom, you die. It'd be like a shock. You need to have these transitional periods in your
well,
life.
and when the paradigm of are you doing enough of the right tasks, or are you acting in the wrong behaviors, when it's all these sort of externalized measurements of you, then we're thinking, well, I need to stop doing these things and I need to start doing more of these things, and then I'll have it all worked out. And all of that sort of uh, us taking into our own hands a sense of how it's supposed to work And again, I have to underscore my emphasis on ontology. We to be in Christ, that our being is far more significant than our doing. And the reason is because our doing doesn't get us to the being. But the being then gives us the eyes and the orientation to then act in the way of Christ.
Wow. I
We'll
love
act out the humility, act out the love in ways that you didn't even think you were capable of loving others, that have hurt you or done wrong to you, that you're able to truly love them, not just throw words at that, to truly love them. But see that you can't do that as like a task. You can't muster that up. You got to be who God has made you, and embrace that, and embrace that who you exist as the beloved of God. And in doing that, that all of the behaviors, all of the tasks take care of themselves. But very often our religious mindset is to emphasize what are the behaviors, what are the tasks that we are doing or not doing.
Right.
And
Oh,
we miss it because we assume that those things will produce in us that deeper sense of who we are, when it won't.
right.
It will empty. It will be like our cup got turned over and everything it poured into us poured right out.
Right.
But it's supposed to be the cup sits upright and everything God pours into us just overflows over the
Overflows, right.
We're not being depleted, but it is just who he is, that we become those icons of who Christ loved.
Wow. So much. Wow, I could go another hour with you. There's so much.
You're too kind.
We got to do a part 2.
Well, maybe so. You'll have to set me up.
Yeah.
And maybe there'll be another blog that catches your eye.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have anything up and coming that's on your heart, or anything you'd like to share before we close out?
Not in particular. I've been working on an anthology of my own songs.
You have. Oh.
My oldest daughter said to me, she said it about 10 years ago. She said, so you got all these songs. Are you going to ever, are you just going to die and they're going to go with you? So, which was just the right way to guilt me. And so I started thinking, and because I'm a producer engineer, she knew I had the studio stuff. So,
Wow.
and I had the other session players that I could pull in to work with me. So I started working on my own stuff, also because people, my contemporaries, some of them have had health issues, So I recognized that the skills that I have as a singer songwriter, to produce and play music, is these are perishable skills.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can't wait. So when is that going to be produced? Are you?
Well, I've already put out. I've released the first 3 albums of the anthology, and I'm working on the last one now.
Okay.
So you can find those up on Spotify or
I
wherever
didn't know.
I don't know where you might stream music, but you'll find it there. You can just type my name in.
Cool.
But I just finished. My brother Jeff had, and I know he posts sometimes on your on the website, on the Facebook site. He had a collection of the Psalms of Ascent, Psalms 120 through 134, and we worked on that album. And so he's like 3 years older than me. And I told him, "Look, we're going to do this," and he said, "No." He said, "I don't even play guitar." I said, "No, we're going to do it." I said, what he wrote was so tremendous. And so I said, "No, we're going to do it." And so we just finished that, and that release. So Jeff Doles' Pilgrim Psalms would be another thing to check out on Spotify or wherever else. An excellent collection of the Psalms. And if you're anybody that's familiar with Eugene Peterson's book, Long Obedience in the Same Direction, that was inspirational to my brother Jeff writing.
He's the guy that wrote the Passion, the Message, right? The Message.
He did that interpretation, right?
Oh, okay.
Right.
Pilgrims. Oh, sorry. What was it? Pilgrim what?
Pilgrim Psalms.
Psalms. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Jeff Doles.
Oh, yeah, Jeff. Okay.
So I recommend that highly.
Cool.
That just released, and like I say, I'm hoping to by the end of the year finish up the last of my anthology of songs.
Wow.
So
Exciting. A lot of new stuff in the works. Are you working with the GAN network as well, the Grace Awakening Network, with Robin and Matt Pandel and
no, not really.
because they are doing they're starting in March. They're going to do some session. They actually have their own little channel on a Roku network, so it's
Is it
going to
right?
be the Grace Awakening Network channel, and it's going to be just segments of different pastors, preachers, teachers, authors, and musicians, artists that are sharing for like 30-minute slots throughout the day, like 24 hours a day. I don't
That
know
sounds
how
like
they're fitting it all in, but amazing. And yeah, there's gonna be like all different people on there, sharing their experiences, strength, hope, about the gospel, very gospel centered, very finished work theology, the restoration of all things, that kind of thing. And I think you might like it. Check it out, see if you can,
yeah,
tap into that, because they're always looking for more, writers or people to hop on board, help with that. It's a big job what they're doing. I'm getting all these emails, and
yeah.
because
Imagine that for that you have to always having fresh content.
yeah, so I'm doing a little thing. I'll have a 5:30 a.m. time slot on Tuesdays. So every Tuesday at 5:30, I'll be doing a series, my joy pod. So that'll be interesting. I'm excited about that. But I'm trying to spread the word too, because creative minds, getting together and networking. It's one of my
Yeah,
passions.
that's kind of the renaissance of this the technical. It's funny we started talking about technology,
Hmm.
but there's a renaissance to this kind of being able to uh, for people to express their faith
Hmm.
in the unique ways that God has given them giftings in.
It is a beautiful thing, and the timing was so divine. Just with everything going on during the pandemic, it was hard to be feeling so alone in my theology. I didn't know there were others like me out there.
Right?
So because I was in lockdown, sitting on my computer for all hours of the day, I was able to meet you and others, and
Kindred spirit, right?
yeah,
No, I hear you. I
good
hear you.
things out of it too.
That's the upside of it, and just the idea that we're able to decentralize how we're communicating
Hmm.
our our understanding of our faith journey.
Yeah.
And it's not so much like I say. I when people ask me about my theology and things, I dare not try to formalize any of it. I'm aware of all the formal versions of it,
Yeah.
but I'm not trying to create a whole nother thing.
Yes. Me
I'm
too.
trying to, like I was saying before, go back to those habituated disciplines
Hmm.
that center around those ontological truths of who God is and who I am in Him,
Hmm.
and that's its own journey because
Hmm.
I'm learning to sort of shed the skin of all the of all the the illusions that I've created for myself about what it's supposed to mean,
Hmm.
and that way I can enter into it uh, uh, more genuinely. And I think we all do that in our own way. We like that. The way I'm doing it can't be the way you do it.
Right.
It couldn't possibly be,
Right.
because what you have to shed is going to be different, and what
Hmm.
you need to learn to embrace about those ontological truths that you didn't realize were that powerful. You need to be the one to embrace them. You can't do it as a system of some theology that I might tell
Yeah.
you.
Hmm.
It has to be you habituate those practices
Hmm.
uh, and disciplines within your own life. So
Hmm. Very good. Well, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. I'm off to working with my daughter on a few projects we have.
okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. Very good.
Before bed. We're night owls. We stay up a little late, especially
There you
on
go.
days where we might have another snow day.
Especially on snowy days.
Yeah.
There you go.
That'll be nice. All right.
We don't have any of that in Gainesville, Florida. So
No, yeah. You should check out our my post on Facebook. We made the news here at our
wow.
local news channel because my daughter and my husband made this giant snowman with a hat and everything and scarf and then they took the hat off and put our dog on top of him. And it's the funniest picture. I'm like, how did you guys make that? I'm like, an hour went by. It was amazing. They impressed me. I'm sitting there just making tea and cleaning up, and I go outside and there's a giant snowman. So
You're
yeah.
on the news.
Hmm. So
All
we
right
made
then.
it on. All right.
Well,
Well, take
the
care.
pleasure's been
God
all
bless.
mine.
Yes,
And
pleasure.
we'll do it again sometime if you'd like.
Thank you. Sounds
All right.
good. Take care. Bye.